Well, don't you just love the loony left? They abhor the government, capitalism and we citizens, but are more than comfortable at helping themselves to great dollops of council grants, courtesy of you, to fund their fiendish schemes. Our next guest has written a great piece in The Spectator Australia this week, and all about two woke festivals descending upon Sydney. Coming up, Bella de Brera. Here she is, Director of the Foundations of Western Civilization at the IPA, ipa.org.au if you want to subscribe. Great to see you. How are you?
Wonderful. It's so great to be back after 2.5 years of exile from the studio.
We've missed you. We've missed you. We sort of got to get Bella back at the desk. So fantastic. Now tell us about festivals of woke.
Oh, look, where do I begin? So we've got two competing festivals on in Sydney at the moment, which I think would cause a problem for the Teal Army, because they're going to be having to decide whether to hold the big Allegra Spender posters or go down to the festivals of woke. We've got one of them, which is the Sydney Writers' Festival, which is hilariously entitled Change My Mind. I make the point in the article that it's unlikely that anyone involved in this festival would have their minds changed, because their minds have been set long ago about how they perceive the world. And of course, it's taxpayer funded. And I would hazard a guess that no ordinary mainstream Australian would like to spend 2 or 3 days sitting around with a mask on, but not socially distanced, listening to talks on racism, on climate change, on Indigenous issues, pretty much everything that you would imagine the Sydney Writers' Festival to be, it is. But the point is...
I wrote a book this year. Why wasn't I invited to friggin' Sydney Writers Festival?
I didn't get invited, James.
No, I haven't been invited.
Well, there's 400 writers, artists, other creative types at this Sydney Writers Festival. 20% conservative, centre-right, do you think? Maybe 10%?
I'd say
she's on
2%.
fire.
2%.
2%.
Yeah, Greg Shoden has one event.
What?
Right.
Okay, so he's the conservative representation out of the 400 people. Okay,
They've even got Yasmin Al-Magid dialing in from London.
Oh, bless him. Wonderful. The gift that gives. Fantastic. Yasmin, please.
Wonderful. Hey, but I also want to ask you about this other bit, the Biennale, which I presume is our own Sydney version of the Venice Biennale. But I've just been reading some of the things that are in there, and we've got questions about what do the eels think? Can a river sue us over psychoactive sewage? We're talking about hydrofeminism, whether a water mass owns itself and should be made into an independent legal entity. You say this is all nothing but pagan worship. To me, this looks like it's a College of Cardinals meeting of the Church of Gaia. What does this have to do with art?
Absolutely nothing. And if you were to judge a civilization on its culture and the art that it produces, it's safe to say that reading through the program for the Biennale, you can assume and you can conclude that Western civilization is in decline.
Oh, yes.
But is there...
It's gone underwater.
It's gone underwater. Sorry, with the eels. It's listening to what the eels are thinking.
What do eels think? What's that got to do with it?
I don't think they think very much.
But is there? Well, they think that they're really nice on rice with a bit of that sauce on top of them. But what is there any place in any of these taxpayer-funded things for what we would think of the classical arts, the high arts, anything we would recognize as art, or is it all just this woke nonsense?
Well, when we're talking about the Biennale, it's all woke nonsense. There is nothing in there that is recognisable as art, as you and I, as we understand to be art. Similarly, with the Arts Council, for the Australia Council for the Arts, since 2016, it's forked out $360 million on a range of projects that are divisive, offensive, and not of interest really to mainstream Australians. That if they had to sell tickets to these things, there'd be empty seats, they'd be broke.
So basically the taxpayers are funding this unhinged activism masquerading as art.
Yes, it's political activism masquerading as art. The Biennale is more than politics. As you said, James, it's religion. It's pagan. It's Gaia worship. It's pre-Christian. I mean, they're all turning up to worship Mother Earth.
Well, on that point, I got quite excited when I saw in your article in The Spectator that the Biennale has one segment called After Dark. I thought Sky News, After Dark. Paul Murray will be there, Andrew Bolt, Peter Credlin, they'll all be there, but no, sadly not. The After Dark segment is where you have to clasp your hands together and bow your head in a religious fashion and say, and I quote, so it's like a prayer, so we'll all practice this together. I let my feet fall in the spring so shallow, and yet I'm afraid. I say a few words in prayer and acknowledgement. Okay, so there's prayer, but it's prayer to the water spirit, spirit water. I don't know if they're one and the same thing or two separate things, a water spirit and a spirit water.
Do you dilute your spirits with some water?
My words are offered in protection and respect. Respect, friggin' respect. They respect everybody but mainstream Australia. There's respect, respect, but no, if you say something they disagree, no respect there. And then they go into intangible, human, non-human grace. You're right, it's quite sinister because it is paganism.
And if we criticise it, we're called Philistines. That's what really annoys me the most, is as if we can't recognise good art. And the problem is that it's woke bureaucrats who are completely in control of the funds.
But so Bella, we have had a supposedly nominally conservative government in power since 2013. So 9 years of that. Every time I have talked to the arts minister about this, they always just say, oh, well, it's an independent body, and they put themselves arm's length from it. If Labour gets up in 2 weeks, I mean, this is going to...
The Eels will be happy.
The Eels
and
will
not
be
the
happy.
football team.
And not the Parramatta Eels, which Andrew Charlton couldn't recognise the other day. But no...
Christina Keneally,
she'd be fine on that. But, is there any prospect for reform? Or is it that private philanthropy now has to step up and start supporting, the arts organizations, the classical music organizations, the operas, and all of those sorts of things, where the government simply refuses to?
Well, I think that's going to be the only way. I mean, a Labour government is not going to abolish the Australia Council for the Arts, and neither is a
Or reform it.
Or reform it. So the only way is to adopt a model where philanthropists fund the orchestras, they fund Opera Australia, they fund decent arts and culture. I don't know if that's going to happen in Australia. I hope it does. But if we keep going this way, it's just a complete waste of our money, and it's embarrassing because there are brilliant artists in Australia, there are brilliant musicians, people who can paint, people who can sculpt, people who have real creative drive, and they're not getting any funding and they're not getting any airtime.
Yeah, but I can tell you who else can fund these things, and that's the public, because they go along to see it because they love it and they think it's brilliant, and it's called capitalism. Who'd have thought? You'd create a product that people love and want to see, as opposed to dirge like rubbish like this, which nobody wants to see, but you end up paying for regardless. Dr. Bella de Brera, thanks so much, Director of the Foundations for Western Civilization. We need Bella there to keep on certainly propping up those pillars of Western civilization. Thanks. Always great to see you, Bella. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.